most of you know, I try my best to avoid rank punditry on this channel. I try my sincere best to bring ideas and analysis that will hopefully last longer than a week or two, so that my videos and streams that I do will last the test of time while showing my development as a commentator and a creator. I've only done this one other time, and I don't intend to make a habit of it, but I think the events of the last week or so and the preceding fallout from it has me in such a bitter mood that I've decided to make this a little rant to express both my frustrations, but perhaps to offer some insight that some of you may seem to like, especially those of you with common sense. But as we both know, common sense isn't all that common these days. So I'll rant first, but then I'll go on to the deeper problem. So let us begin. Our story begins with a woman, a pornographer by the stage name Brandi Love. She had purchased an adult VIP ticket to Turning Point USA's Student Action Summit, or SAS, and had expressed excitement about being in attendance and most likely taking the opportunity to speak to the audience. The 38-year-old Brandi brands herself as a conservative porn star whose branding includes things along the lines of scantily clad American flag-themed clothing and America First political messaging, and has contributed to the right-of-center publication Federalist magazine, which should be telling you that they'll take anyone these days. Whilst being an outspoken conservative for some time now, when it came to the attention of those involved organizing the event, which they say came from concerned parents, which I sincerely doubt, her invitation was rescinded. However, she was still able to attend the conference on her own volition, in a hotel room that she paid for. It certainly caused a backlash on Twitter and other conservative media outlets here in the United States, which had caused some infighting amongst social conservatives and the big tent inclusion crowd of the party apparatus who still think that mainstream methods of political engagement are still worthy and profitable efforts. It was an unlikely coalition of those who came to her defense, from Meghan McCain and her husband to the overly online types who are more libertine in their social persuasions as long as it means to own the libs. And finally, when the reactions, ratios, and the response to the rampant degeneracy coming out of this purported invitation. Remember, this is the same organization that allowed trans woman Caitlyn Jenner to speak at CPAC. The usual defense that TPUSA has used in the past came from Brandi and her supporters. This so-called frog Twitter is just a bunch of low-T white nationalists, she would say. Despite the fact that the complaint came from reactionaries, religious individuals, normal conservative pundits and commentators, as well as elected representatives. The response is almost part and parcel from what you would have gotten from the Nick Fuentes crowd just a few years ago. But what I find most frustrating about this whole ordeal is that the right in the United States, at least those purported to be on the right, have lost track about actually what the hell it means to be right-wing in the first place. Ask most elected representatives, pundits, and mainstream GOP voters of what it means to be right-wing or conservative in the United States in the first place, and you will get an answer that is almost word for word the definition of liberalism in its Enlightenment definition. Hell, PragerU came out with the truth right there where it's going in its current outer party form just back in March. Tweeting, and I quote, "Conservatism does not compete with liberalism, it sustains it. Without conservatism, there is no liberalism," end quote. Which brings us to the problem that we face with the right today. So as I transition from rant to my usual self, here we go. There are a plethora of phrases that define the current problem with the right in the West, besides the obvious that there is no actual representation from what many right-leaning individuals would want to have happen within their respective democratic systems, or at least on the federal level here in the United States. But even within my short lifetime, whether it's debates over gay marriage, government spending, foreign interventionism, time and time again you will hear the usual crowd of gatekeeping voices, almost always punching right, saying the phrase, "This isn't the hill to die on." And here's the truth about that phrase. To these individuals, there is no hill worth dying on, unless you're Ben Shapiro and Ben & Jerry's does something towards Israel. But the Brandi Love incident is a great way to see how things move to the left in action. It is both a linguistic failing of the right wing, along with the repetition of a failed strategy over and over again trying to beat their opponents at their own game. Consider the following. Just over 5 years ago or so, Ben Shapiro was in the hot seat for adamantly defending the position that trans women aren't women, to a point where he was physically assaulted and threatened, live on air, about refusing to respect someone's preferred pronouns. An admirable position if you're remotely socially conservative. Today, the same man will edit out a joke about pansexuals from his usual Daily Wire show. It is apparent that the cuck-servative of 2015 has evolved to the coom-servative of 2021. The GOP went from "there's no such thing as systemic racism" to now having Mitch McConnell on the Senate floor argue about how the current push from defunding the police from Democrats will actually harm the pursuit of racial justice in the United States. Adopting the framing of your enemies will give you no victory, and only trigger a response from the left that leaves you with no quarter. For many of you, especially within this particular sphere of politics, may find this redundant, or the very least repetitive, but it is important to make abundantly clear. The right in the West has, for the better part of a half-century, forgotten its socially conservative and traditional roots. What seems to be left in this current state of affairs is nothing more than the focus on economics. What's good for the goose is good for the gander type of conservatism. What has been jokingly referred to by both the left and the right as line-go-up politics has become more or less the golden calf of our political class, and by extension its mouthpieces for both the mainstream right and left that will worship it above all else. Does it matter that the nation probably cannot hold together as we market a new kind of racial grievance, as we funnel millions of dollars out of the lower and middle classes to the politically wealthy elite and causes? Nah. Look at all the jobs that were created and the money spent into the economy. Does it matter that we have a media and a market complex that exploits liberalism's emphasis on the individual and their own unique autonomy to create a multi-billion-dollar industry for reassignment surgeries, neo-pronouns, and the destruction of women's-only spaces where girls can be exposed to a trans woman's genitals? Of course not. The phrase, "this isn't the hill worth dying on," is almost always accompanied by the phrase, "it's their own life, they can do whatever they want," whilst the social fabric of the country tears every time. The phrase purposefully allows the leftist dialectic and ratchet to turn with minimal opposition, and in fact facilitates the leftward direction as almost all policy tends to lean towards the left. Power is seized at all times when the enemy willingly surrenders ground. This is the consequence of the supposed secularism that comes with most form of liberal democracies. God and his doctrine will be cannibalized in the pursuit of some kind of higher teleological meaning. Now, in our current late Republic stage here in the United States, and by extension most of the West, as the United States' biggest export is its culture and culture wars, we see baptisms take place at the site where George Floyd overdosed, iconoclasm taking place for nurses, and religious candles for prayer being reskinned with the Democratic officials like Stacey Abrams. If there is any sort of right wing to exist in the future, it must stand on the following three principles if it has any chance to survive. 1. Do not allow for a political system or political formula that tolerates a party or faction that is bent on you and your people's destruction. 2. It must value traditionalism and a strong moral center above the market. It cannot treat the GDP or the free market as some sort of golden calf that must be praised above all else. 3. Recognize that we cannot go back, for the meantime at least. While there are many things that we do that can generate an animating spirit, the idea of going back to 1787 or even 1955 isn't possible, but that does not mean that the values and tradition cannot be carried on in some way. In many ways, the reason why this continues to happen is that the value we place, at least here in the United States, is too much on the original founding mythos and not enough about the present facts or what those allegedly on the right are doing or saying. This isn't an attack on the founders or the U.S. Constitution. Hell, I studied America's founding as my focus for my degree in history. But the more and more we saber-rattle at rallies and beat the drum about the Constitution, the Sons of Liberty, and the Revolution, the more we let the current decay slip past right by us and slip through our fingers. Why would you reject Brandi? She hates communists just as much as you do, and we need all the help you can get. But why on earth, as both a matter of principle and a matter of optics, would I want to say that my degenerate is more based than your degenerate, or rally behind those who will rant and rave about the left but have no problem with the death of the unborn? I'm looking at you, Tommy Lauren. But also these people have no allegiance, not to any first principles or cause. If they did, do you think that they would be pornographers? Or they would be independent only just recently now joining the right wing? Would they be MAGA drag queens? It is deceitful as every non-white person running as a Republican in a D+20 district here in the US. The grift, the gatekeeping, and the desire to have the right to be something for everyone. But as those who claim that conservatism is for everyone, when something is for everyone, it becomes something for no one. Brandi humorously called TPUSA a guise for organized religion, which she hates. Again, godlessness, an adherent to the new secular religion that has gone a long way into getting us into the mess that we are in now. The open season that has been made on social conservatives for years now has a direct line to the phrase that is the title of this video. This isn't the hill to die on. Think of the optics. Let them have this. We'll get them here instead. Yet there hasn't been a substantial right-wing victory in any time every time that phrase has been said. It's the equivalent of, "There's a lot to unpack here, sweetie," that you would get from an urbanite lefty on Twitter. In the last 30 years or so, the GOP in the United States went from boasting about getting that Satanist crap out of our kids' schools to openly fundraising for a transgender woman with not a single right-wing bone in her body to be governor in the bluest state in the Union is a Republican. The brazenness of attacking the central tenets of what makes the right, from individuals allegedly on its own side, is only yet another example of how the ratchet keeps moving leftward. As the old saying goes, the game plan of the right is merely to defend what they abhorred 5 years ago. It is important to say this once again. Every hill is a hill worth dying on, no matter how small, how petty, how insignificant it may seem. The left is entropic in its nature, a blazing wildfire slowly moving from forest to forest, plain to plain. The burns aren't going to be permanent, but the fire has been raging and now it's coming even faster now. Fleeing is no longer an option. The exits are being closed out in a variety of ways, but you can hose down your home and do your best to fireproof it. Preserve knowledge. Keep a record of history so that one day the truth might be revealed. Foster the strength of your local community, especially if you live outside the cities. Always make your case, and always speak the truth. So while TPUSA and Kirk might be pushed to the right for the time being, utilize this moment to recognize how the leftist ratchet turns to the left. This backlash and reaction will only show us to lead the future of normalizations of other dubious characters as long as they advocate for lower taxes and smaller government, although we haven't had a small government since the 1860s. It is more to the right than sloganeering and ghost dancing that we see so often from conservative politicians and pundits everywhere. The acceleration is rampant, but this does not mean abandoning the efforts to pursue alternatives, building up communities, doing what you can to improve yourself. Remember, the next time you hear the phrase, "This isn't the hill to die on," stand your ground. Principles and your own moral center are worth more than their weight in gold. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Be prudent, everyone. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoy this kind of work, I would love it for you to share it with other similar, like-minded people. If you'd like to support me, you can pay for my anti-rejection medication through Subscribestar or YouTube memberships, like these lovely people on screen. Each and every tier has a variety of benefits, such as access to input on future content, stream appearances, as well as a community stream that I plan on doing just for the backers and members once a month. Until next time, I'll see you all in the next video.